One, we've got a real treat for you. A classic 1958 Buick Special that's sure to turn heads wherever it goes. This beauty is currently up for grabs on Craigslist, and let me tell you, it's a deal you don't want to miss. First off, let's talk about the condition of this Buick. The seller states that it's in very nice shape, and from what I can see in the photos, I'd have to agree. The red paint job looks vibrant and eye-catching, and the interior seems to be in great condition too. However, it's important to note that the car does need a new windshield and headliner, so keep that in mind if you're considering making an offer. Under the hood, you'll find a powerful 364 nailhead engine that's ready to roar to life. With 8 cylinders and rear-wheel drive, this Buick is built for performance. The seller mentions that the car starts, drives, and stops well, which is always a good sign when you're dealing with a classic ride like this. Now, let's talk about the price. The seller is asking $11,000 for this Buick Special, which might seem like a lot at first glance. However, when you consider the overall condition of the car and the fact that it's a rare 4-door hardtop model, it starts to look like a pretty fair deal. Plus, the seller seems open to offers, so there might be some wiggle room if you're interested in negotiating. Overall, if you're in the market for a classic car that's sure to make a statement, this 1958 Buick Special is definitely worth checking out. With its stunning red exterior, powerful engine, and mostly solid condition, it's a ride that's sure to bring a smile to your face every time you get behind the wheel. So why not give the seller a call and see if you can make a deal? You might just end up driving home in your dream car. 2. We've got a real gem for you. A 1973 Pontiac Grand Prix that's sure to turn heads and get your heart racing. This beauty is currently up for grabs on Craigslist, and let me tell you, it's a ride you don't want to miss out on. First off, let's talk about the history of this Grand Prix. It's a second-owner car, which means it's been well loved and cared for over the years. With approximately 138,000 miles on the odometer, this Pontiac has seen its fair share of the road. But don't let that fool you, it's still got plenty of life left in it. Under the hood, you'll find a powerful 400 cubic inch motor with a 4-barrel carb that's ready to roar. The previous owner even rebuilt the engine around 40,000 miles ago and added a mild cam for a little extra oomph. And with an automatic transmission, this Grand Prix is a breeze to drive. Now, let's talk about the condition of this classic ride. The seller mentions that the car was painted years ago, and while it may not be a fresh coat, it still looks pretty darn good. The interior is also in great shape, with a fantastic headliner, dash, and seats. However, it's important to note that the trunk pan and weather stripping could use some attention, so keep that in mind if you're considering making an offer. But here's the best part. This Grand Prix runs and drives like a dream. The seller even says they'd drive it across the country tomorrow without hesitation. That's a testament to the quality and reliability of this classic Pontiac. As for the price, the seller is asking $8,995 for this Grand Prix, which is a pretty fair deal considering the overall condition and the work that's been put into it. And if you've got an SUV lying around that you're looking to trade, the seller is open to that as well. Overall, if you're in the market for a classic car that's got style, power, and a whole lot of character, this 1973 Pontiac Grand Prix is definitely worth checking out. So why not give the seller a call and see if you can make a deal? You might just end up cruising down the road in your new favorite ride. 3. We've got a real treat for you. A 1979 Lincoln Town Car Continental that's in absolutely incredible condition. This beauty is currently up for sale on Craigslist, and let me tell you, it's a ride that's sure to impress. First off, let's talk about the condition of this Lincoln. The seller describes it as like new, and from what I can see in the photos, that's no exaggeration. The red paint job is stunning, with a thickness of 70-80 microns and no bubbles or rust to be found. The seller even recently spent $1,000 on a hand polishing and ceramic coating, so you know this car is going to shine like a diamond in the sun. Moving on to the interior, it's just as impressive as the exterior. The seller notes that it's very clean, with no stains or rips to be found. And get this, everything works. That's right, from the AC to the cruise control to the power antenna and even the Cartier clock, Every feature on this Lincoln is in perfect working order. Under the hood, you'll find a powerful V8 engine that's paired with an automatic transmission. The seller mentions that the car starts, drives, and shifts perfectly, with no problems or issues to report. And with only 58,564 miles on the odometer, this Lincoln has plenty of life left in it. Now, the seller does mention that there are some paint chips on the front of the car, which is worth noting. However, they've provided plenty of pictures so you can see exactly what you're getting. And honestly, with the overall condition of this Lincoln, a few paint chips are a small price to pay. As for the price, the seller is asking $11,000 for this incredible ride. And while that might seem like a lot at first glance, when you consider the condition, the low mileage, and the fact that the seller wouldn't hesitate to drive it cross-country, it starts to look like a pretty darn good deal. Overall, if you're in the market for a classic car that's in incredible condition and ready to hit the road, this 1979 Lincoln Town Car Continental is definitely worth checking out. With its stunning red paint job, clean interior, and powerful V8 engine, it's a ride that's sure to turn heads and make you the envy of every car enthusiast in town. So why not give the seller a call and see if you can make a deal? You might just end up driving home in your dream car. 4. We've got a real beast of a machine for you. A 1972 Ford Ranchero 500 that's been built to impress. This beauty is currently up for grabs on Craigslist, and let me tell you, it's a ride that's sure to get your heart racing. First off, let's talk about the engine on this Ranchero. It's a 351 Cleveland that was built by none other than O'Grady Racing Engines, and it's got the receipts to prove it. We're talking over $7,000 in documented upgrades, including Edelbrock heads, an Iski cam, and lifters, and a fully prepared and tested block. This thing is ready to roar. But the engine isn't the only thing that's been given some love on this Ranchero. The C4 transmission has been recently rebuilt, so you know it's ready to handle all the power that the 351 is putting out. And with only 5,000 miles on the rebuilt engine, you can bet this thing has plenty of life left in it. Now, let's talk about the body and interior. The seller notes that they're both original, which is a testament to how well this Ranchero has been cared for over the years. And with vintage Craigslist wheels and new tires, this thing looks just as good as it runs. But the upgrades don't stop there. This Ranchero also has dual exhaust and a retrofitted R134 air conditioning system, so you can stay cool and comfortable even on the hottest of days. And with a clean title and only 15,173 miles on the odometer, you know you're getting a solid ride. As for the price, the seller is asking $12,500 for this incredible machine. And while that might seem like a lot at first glance, when you consider all the upgrades and the overall condition of this Ranchero, it starts to look like a pretty darn good deal. Overall, if you're in the market for a classic ride that's been built to impress, this 1972 Ford Ranchero 500 is definitely worth checking out. With its powerful 351 Cleveland engine, recently rebuilt transmission, and original body and interior, it's a ride that's sure to turn heads and get your adrenaline pumping. So why not give the seller a call and see if you can make a deal? You might just end up driving home in your dream machine. 5. We've got a real gem for you, a 1970 Buick Skylark that's just waiting for the right person to give it some love. This beauty is currently up for sale on Craigslist. And let me tell you, it's a project car that's sure to get your creative juices flowing. First off, let's talk about the condition of this Skylark. The seller notes that it's got a couple of rust spots, which is pretty common for a car of this age. But don't let that scare you off. The body and frame are still very straight, and the car looks great from underneath. With a little elbow grease and some TLC, this Skylark could be a real showstopper. Now, let's talk about the mechanics. The seller has put in some work to get this car running, including new fluids, spark plugs, cables, and a cleaned gas tank. And the best part? The car starts up, drives, and stops like a champ. It's a very nice running project that's just waiting for someone to take it to the next level. One of the coolest things about this Skylark is that it's all original, with a clean title and only 78,000 miles on the odometer. That's pretty low mileage for a car that's over 50 years old. and it's a testament to how well this car has been cared for over the years. The seller also mentions that they have a set of bucket seats that need to be reupholstered, which they're willing to throw in with the sale. That's a nice little bonus that could save you some money down the line if you decide to give this Skylark a full restoration. As for the price, the seller is asking $7,500 for this Buick, and while that might seem like a lot for a project car, when you consider the overall condition, the low mileage, and the potential for restoration, it starts to look like a pretty fair deal. Overall, if you're in the market for a classic car that's got a ton of potential, this 1970 Buick Skylark is definitely worth checking out. With its straight body, nice running condition, and all original features, it's a project car that could be an absolute blast to work on. So why not give the seller a call and see if you can make a deal? Just be sure to respect their time and don't waste it. They're looking for a serious buyer who's ready to give this Skylark the love it deserves. 6. We've got a real blast from the past for you, a 1951 Ford Victoria that's just oozing with vintage charm. This beauty is currently up for grabs on Craigslist, and let me tell you, it's a ride that's sure to turn heads wherever it goes. First off, let's talk about the specs on this Victoria. It's got a 3-speed manual transmission on the column, which is just so classic and cool. And under the hood, you'll find a V8 flathead engine that's ready to rumble. There's just something about the sound of a vintage V8 that gets the heart racing, isn't there? Now, the sellers do mention that they've only driven this car a couple of times since acquiring it, which is worth noting. They even have some videos of the car in action that they're willing to send over via text or email, which is a nice touch. One thing to keep in mind is that the ignition is worn out and needs to be replaced. But don't worry, the sellers have a new ignition ready to go, and they'll send it along with the car. It's always nice when a seller is upfront about any issues and is willing to provide solutions. The sellers also mention that everything on this Victoria is original, which is a real selling point for vintage car enthusiasts. There's just something special about a car that's been largely untouched over the years, isn't there? As for the condition, the sellers describe it as good, which is encouraging. Of course, with any vintage car, there may be some minor wear and tear, but that's all part of the charm. Now let's talk about the price. The sellers are asking $9,200 for this Victoria, which seems like a fair price for a vintage car in good condition. Of course, they do mention that they're open to offers, so there may be some wiggle room there. One thing I really appreciate about this listing is that the sellers are upfront about their own limitations. They mention that they don't have the time, knowledge, or desire to work on or restore old cars, which is totally understandable. It's always better to be honest about what you can and can't do, rather than trying to take on a project that's beyond your abilities. The sellers also mention that they're open to trades, which could be a nice option if you've got something cool to offer in exchange. Overall, if you're in the market for a vintage ride with plenty of character, this 1951 Ford Victoria is definitely worth checking out. With its classic styling, original features, and V8 flathead engine, it's a car that's sure to make you the coolest kid on the block. Just be prepared to put in a little work to get that ignition sorted out, and you'll be cruising in style in no time. 7. We've got a real sleeper of a ride for you. A 1984 Buick Regal that's been seriously upgraded under the hood. This beauty is currently up for sale on Craigslist, and let me tell you, it's a car that's ready to surprise some unsuspecting challengers at the stoplight. First off, let's talk about the heart of this beast. The seller has swapped out the original engine for a 305 Chevy, which is a serious upgrade in terms of power. And to handle all that extra oomph, they've also installed a 700R4 transmission and a quick performance rear end. This thing is built to go fast and handle all that power with ease. But the upgrades don't stop there. The seller has also installed a new aluminum radiator to keep things cool under pressure, as well as a new Holly Street Avenger carb and fuel pump to keep that engine fed. And with a new 2.5-inch stainless steel exhaust and hooker headers, this Regal is going to sound just as mean as it looks. Speaking of looks, the seller has also given this Regal a fresh set of wheels and tires, complete with center caps and nuts. It's a subtle upgrade that really ties the whole package together and gives this car a seriously aggressive stance. Now, The seller does mention that they have well over $7,000 invested in this car, which is a testament to just how much work and upgrades have gone into it. And while the asking price of $7,000 might seem a bit steep at first glance, when you consider all the upgrades and the overall condition of the car, it starts to look like a pretty fair deal. The seller also mentions that they're open to trades for a Chevy pickup in decent shape, which could be a nice option if you've got a truck lying around that you're looking to swap for a seriously fast and fun car. Overall, if you're in the market for a sleeper car that's ready to surprise some unsuspecting challengers, this 1984 Buick Regal is definitely worth checking out. With its upgraded engine, transmission, and rear end, as well as its fresh wheels and exhaust, this thing is a serious contender on the street. And with the seller's willingness to trade for a pickup, there may be some flexibility in terms of making a deal. So why not give them a call and see if you can work something out? You might just end up with a seriously cool and unique ride that's sure to turn heads wherever you go. 8. We've got an absolute gem for you. A 1981 Lincoln Town Car that's in absolutely incredible condition. This beauty is currently up for sale on Craigslist, and let me tell you, it's a ride that's sure to turn heads and drop jaws wherever it goes. First off, let's talk about the condition of this town car. The seller describes it as excellent, and based on the photos, I'd have to agree. The exterior looks absolutely pristine, with a shine that's sure to blind you on a sunny day. And the interior? It looks like it's been preserved in a time capsule since 1981. The leather seats are plush and inviting, and the wood grain accents are just so classic and elegant. Under the hood, you'll find a powerful 8-cylinder engine that's ready to rumble, and with rear-wheel drive and an automatic transmission, this town car is a dream to drive. It's the kind of car that just floats down the road, soaking up bumps and potholes like they're nothing. Now I know what you might be thinking. But wait, isn't this car over 40 years old? Surely it must have some issues. Well, let me tell you, the seller seems to have thought of everything. They mention in the ad that they own the car themselves, so they've got all the info you could possibly want on its history and condition. And if you're worried about the car being sold before you can get to it, don't be. The seller makes it clear that as long as the ad is up, the car is still available. But here's the best part. The seller is welcoming offers without even seeing the car in person. That's right. They're so confident in the quality of this town car that they're willing to entertain offers sight unseen. Of course, they also invite potential buyers to come check out the car in person, and I highly recommend you do so. Trust me, this is a car that you've got to see to believe. As for the price, the seller is asking $7,800 for this incredible ride. And while that might seem like a lot at first glance, when you consider the condition, the rarity, and the absolute style and class of this town car, it starts to look like an absolute bargain. Overall, if you're in the market for a classic car that's sure to impress, this 1981 Lincoln Town Car is definitely worth checking out. With its excellent condition, powerful engine, and absolute style and class, it's a ride that's sure to turn heads and make you the envy of every car enthusiast in town. So why not take the seller up on their offer and make an offer of your own? Who knows? You might just end up driving home in the car of your dreams. 9. We've got a real classic for you, a 1965 Cadillac Fleetwood that's just begging for a new owner to give it some love. This beauty is currently up for sale on Craigslist, and let me tell you, it's a car that's got a ton of potential. First off, let's talk about the condition of this Fleetwood. The seller describes it as good, and one of the biggest selling points is that there's no rust anywhere on the car. That's right, this is a solid car that's just waiting for someone to take it to the next level. Under the hood, you'll find a brand new rebuilt motor and transmission that have less than 100 miles on them. That's a huge plus, as it means you won't have to worry about any major mechanical issues right off the bat. And with a clean title in hand, you can be sure that this car is ready to hit the road. One of the coolest things about this Fleetwood is its history. The seller mentions that it was purchased from the original owner, who bought it from Fazakerley Cadillac at Stonestown back in the day. It's always nice to have a car with a known history, as it can give you a sense of its journey over the years. Now, the seller does mention that the car would need paint and interior work to be restored to perfection. But honestly, that's part of the fun of owning a classic car, getting to put your own personal touch on it and make it truly yours. And with a solid foundation like this Fleetwood has, the possibilities are endless. As an added bonus, the seller mentions that they have extra 1965 Cadillac parts available for purchase. So if you do decide to take on a restoration project, you'll have access to some hard-to-find parts that could make the process a whole lot easier. As for the price, the seller is asking $7,000 for this Fleetwood. And while that might seem like a lot at first glance, when you consider the potential of this car and the work that's already been done to the engine and transmission, it starts to look like a pretty fair deal. Overall, if you're in the market for a classic car that's got a ton of potential, this 1965 Cadillac Fleetwood is definitely worth checking out. With its solid body, new engine and transmission, and cool history, it's a car that could be an absolute blast to own and restore. And with the seller's extra parts available, you'll have a head start on the restoration process. So why not give them a call and see if you can make a deal? You might just end up with a car that turns heads everywhere you go. 10. We've got a real treat for you. A 1969 Dodge Coronet that's just begging for a new owner to take it to the next level. This beauty is currently up for sale on Craigslist, and let me tell you, it's a car that's got a ton of potential. First off, let's talk about the heart of this beast. Under the hood, you'll find the original 318 small block engine that's been seriously upgraded with some killer mods. We're talking an Edelbrock 4-barrel carb, Edelbrock heads, a whiplash cam, rockers and springs, and new gaskets all around. And with only about 800 miles on the engine after the rebuild, you know this thing is just getting broken in. But the upgrades don't stop there. This Coronet has also been fitted with a A727 TorqueFlite 3-speed automatic transmission and a stock rear-end axle and differential. So you know it's ready to handle all the power that engine is putting out. Now let's talk about the body. The seller mentions that the car has been primered for over 8 years, so it does need to be sandblasted again prior to any paint and body work. But the good news is that the body lines are tight, and there's minimal rust on the typical areas you'd expect on a 50-plus-year-old car. With a little elbow grease and some TLC, this thing could be an absolute showstopper. Inside, the car has been fitted with some seriously cool mods. We're talking door poppers installed for remote opening on all 4 doors, an aftermarket steering wheel, a Dakota digital dash, and new vinyl interior on the seats front and rear. And with rear air adjustable shocks, this thing rides like a dream. The seller also mentions that the car runs great, with all the lights, horn, and gas gauge working as they should. The only thing to keep in mind is that it needs to warm up prior to driving, which is pretty typical for Mopar B bodies. As for the price, the seller is asking $10,000 for this Coronet. And while that might seem like a lot at first glance, when you consider all the upgrades and the potential for this car, it starts to look like a pretty fair deal. Plus, the seller is throwing in some misky parts to sweeten the deal. One thing to note is that the actual odometer miles are unknown due to the original dash cluster being broken. But honestly, with a car like this, it's more about the journey than the destination. Overall, if you're in the market for a classic Mopar that's got a ton of potential and some seriously cool upgrades, this 1969 Dodge Coronet is definitely worth checking out. With its killer engine mods, upgraded interior, and solid body, it's a car that could be an absolute blast to own and drive. So why not hit up the seller and see if you can make a deal? Just be sure to check out the video of the car starting and running first. Trust me, it's worth it. 11. We've got a real gem for you. A 1973 Chevrolet Nova hatchback that's just begging for a new owner to take it to the next level. This beast is currently up for sale on Craigslist, and let me tell you, it's a car that's sure to get your heart racing. First off, let's talk about the rarity of this Nova. The seller mentions that it's a hatchback model, which is super rad and not something you see every day. So right off the bat, you know this car is going to stand out from the crowd. Under the hood, you'll find a 350 engine that's ready to rumble. The seller mentions that the car runs great and is an absolute blast to drive, so you know it's got plenty of power to get you where you need to go. Now, the seller does mention that they picked up this Nova during the pandemic and have done quite a bit of work to it. We're talking replaced floor pans, both front and rear, relocated rear shocks for bigger tires, new carpeting, and new tires with less than 500 miles on them. So you know this car has been well taken care of and is ready for its next adventure. Inside, you'll find a Hurst slap shifter that just adds to the overall coolness factor of this car. And with a clean title and good overall condition, you know you're getting a solid ride. Now, the seller does mention that the odometer is broken, so the actual mileage is unknown. But honestly, with a car like this, it's more about the miles per mile than the actual number on the odometer. As for the price, the seller is asking $13,500 for this Nova. And while that might seem like a lot at first glance, when you consider the rarity of the hatchback model, the upgrades and work that have been done, and the overall coolness factor of this car, it starts to look like a pretty fair deal. The seller also mentions that they're letting this Nova go because it's just not getting driven, and they don't have the time to continue the project. And while that's a bummer for them, it could be a huge opportunity for you to take this car to the next level and make it your own. Overall, if you're in the market for a classic muscle car that's got a ton of potential and some seriously cool features, this 1973 Chevrolet Nova hatchback is definitely worth checking out. With its rare body style, powerful engine, and overall good condition, it's a car that's sure to turn heads and get your adrenaline pumping. So why not reach out to the seller and see if you can make a deal? Who knows? You might just end up with the car of your dreams. 12. We've got a real classic for you, a 1981 Chevrolet Corvette that's just waiting for a new owner to give it some love. This low-mileage beauty is currently up for sale on Craigslist, and let me tell you, it's a car that's got a ton of potential. First off, let's talk about the history of this Corvette. The seller mentions that they acquired it from their dad way back in 2003, which is a pretty cool story. It's always nice to have a car with a family connection, as it adds to the overall sentimentality of the ride. Now, the seller does mention that the car has been sitting pretty much for the past 10 years, which is a bit of a bummer. But the good news is that they've recently installed a new CCM, body control module, and got the car running again. It does need a tune-up or carb rebuild, but hey, that's all part of the fun of owning a classic car, right? The seller has also put in some serious work on this Corvette, installing a new alternator, brake calipers, brake master cylinder, brake shoes, O2 sensor, and many other new parts. So you know it's been well taken care of and is ready for its next adventure. As for the exterior, the seller mentions that the paint has some lacquer cracking, which is pretty common for a car of this age. But they also note that it cleans up nicely, so with a little elbow grease and some TLC, this thing could be a real head-turner. Inside, the driver's seat does need to be reupholstered, which is something to keep in mind. But honestly, that's a pretty easy fix in the grand scheme of things. Now, the seller does mention that the check engine light and choke light are on, which they think might be due to a bad relay. But again, that's all part of the fun of owning a classic car, figuring out what's wrong and getting it fixed. As for the price, the seller is asking $5,500 OBO for this Corvette. And while that might seem like a lot at first glance, when you consider the low mileage, the work that's been done, and the overall potential of this car, it starts to look like a pretty fair deal. Plus, the seller is open to trades for a truck or a pre-1975 car, so there's some flexibility there. One thing to note is that the car does have some back fees on the tags from 2018, which is why the price is a bit lower than you might expect. But honestly, that's a pretty easy fix in the grand scheme of things. Overall, if you're in the market for a classic Corvette that's got a ton of potential and a cool family history, this 1981 model is definitely worth checking out. With its low mileage, recent upgrades, and overall solid condition, it's a car that could be an absolute blast to own and drive. So why not reach out to the seller and see if you can make a deal? Who knows? You might just end up with the car of your dreams. 13. We've got an absolute gem for you. a 1976 Cadillac sedan DeVille that's in absolutely incredible condition. This beauty is currently up for sale on Craigslist, and let me tell you, it's a ride that's sure to turn heads and drop jaws wherever it goes. First off, let's talk about the rarity of this Cadillac. It's a 1976 model, which means it's the last of the really big beasts and the last year of the four-door hardtops with no center pillar between the front and rear glass. That alone makes it a seriously cool and unique ride. But what really sets this sedan DeVille apart is its condition. The seller describes it as excellent, and based on the photos, I'd have to agree. The Innsbruck metallic blue paint is absolutely stunning, and the blue vinyl roof just adds to the overall elegance of this car. It's clear that this Cadillac has been very well taken care of over the years. Under the hood, you'll find a massive 500 cubic inch, 8.4-liter engine that's ready to rumble. The seller mentions that it's solid running and has tons of power, so you know this thing is an absolute beast on the road. And with a smooth transmission and great tires, it's sure to be a dream to drive. One of the most impressive things about this Cadillac is its history. The seller mentions that it was owned by one family all its life until they bought it a few years ago. That's a testament to how well this car has been cared for over the years. And get this, there's no rust anywhere on the car, and no rust repairs have ever been made. That's practically unheard of for a car that's over 40 years old. Inside, the d'Elegance package upgrades are sure to impress. The seller mentions that everything works, which is always a big plus when you're dealing with a classic car. And with under 100,000 kilometers on the odometer, this Cadillac has plenty of life left in it. As for the price, the seller is asking $6,250 or best offer for this incredible ride. And while that might seem like a lot at first glance, when you consider the rarity, condition, and history of this Cadillac, it starts to look like an absolute bargain. Overall, if you're in the market for a classic car that's sure to impress, this 1976 Cadillac sedan DeVille is definitely worth checking out. With its stunning paint job, powerful engine, and incredible history, it's a ride that's sure to turn heads and make you the envy of every car enthusiast in town. So why not give the seller a call and see if you can make a deal? You might just end up driving home in the car of your dreams. 14. We've got a real blast from the past for you, a 1964 Ford Galaxy 500 Fastback that's been given a serious upgrade under the hood. This beauty is currently up for sale on Craigslist, and let me tell you, it's a ride that's sure to get your heart racing. First off, let's talk about the body style of this Galaxy. It's a two-door hardtop fastback, which is just so cool and iconic. The white paint job is classic and timeless, and while the seller mentions that it could use a little TLC, overall this car looks to be in good condition. But what really sets this Galaxy apart is what's under the hood. The seller has swapped out the original engine for a 1996 Ford Mustang 302 V8, which is a serious upgrade in terms of power and performance. And paired with a 3-speed Cruise-O-Matic transmission, this thing is ready to hit the road and turn some heads. Inside, you'll find Galaxy 500 XL bucket seats, which are a nice touch and add to the overall sporty feel of the car. The seller mentions that the car runs and drives excellently, which is always a big plus when you're dealing with a classic ride like this. Now, the seller does mention that the car could use a little TLC, which is worth noting. But honestly, that's part of the fun of owning a classic car, getting to put your own personal touch on it and make it truly yours. And with a solid foundation like this Galaxy has, the possibilities are endless. As for the price, the seller is asking $12,000 for this Galaxy. And while that might seem like a lot at first glance, when you consider the upgrades that have been made and the overall potential of this car, it starts to look like a pretty fair deal. Overall, if you're in the market for a classic ride with some serious power under the hood, this 1964 Ford Galaxy 500 Fastback is definitely worth checking out. With its iconic body style, upgraded engine, and overall good condition, it's a car that's sure to turn heads and get your adrenaline pumping. So why not give the seller a call and see if you can make a deal? You might just end up driving home in your dream car. 15. We've got an absolute gem for you. A 1969 Oldsmobile Delta 88 that's in incredible condition. This beauty is currently up for sale on Craigslist. And let me tell you, it's a ride that's sure to turn heads and make you the envy of every classic car lover in town. First off, let's talk about the color of this Delta 88. It's a stunning meadow green, which is the original factory color. That alone is enough to make this car stand out from the crowd. But when you add in the fact that nearly everything on this Oldsmobile is original, you know you're dealing with a truly special ride. Under the hood, you'll find the original 455 Rocket V8 engine, which is an absolute beast. The seller mentions that the car runs great with no problems and receives regular maintenance, so you know it's been well taken care of over the years. And with a brand new battery and alternator, you can be sure that this Delta 88 is ready to hit the road at a moment's notice. Inside, the green interior with bench seating is in great condition and looks just as good as the day it rolled off the factory floor. The seller mentions that the car operates well in all capacities, with one exception. The AC currently isn't functioning. But honestly, with a car this cool, who needs AC? One of the things that really sets this Delta 88 apart is the documentation that comes with it. The seller includes parts manuals, the original Protecto plate, and thorough service history documentation. That's the kind of stuff that classic car collectors drool over, and it's a testament to how well this Oldsmobile has been cared for over the years. As for the mileage, the seller mentions that the car has just 61,134 miles on the odometer. That's incredibly low for a car that's over 50 years old, and it's a big part of what makes this Delta 88 such a special find. Now, let's talk about the price. The seller is asking $1,150 for this Oldsmobile, which might seem like a lot at first glance. But when you consider the condition, the originality, and the documentation that comes with it, it starts to look like a pretty fair deal. Plus, the seller mentions that delivery is available, so even if you're not local, you might still be able to get your hands on this beauty. Overall, if you're in the market for a classic car that's sure to impress, this 1969 Oldsmobile Delta 88 is definitely worth checking out. With its stunning color, original features, and incredible documentation, it's a ride that's sure to turn heads and make you the talk of the town. So why not give the seller a call and see if you can make a deal? You might just end up driving home in your dream car. 16. We've got a real piece of history for you. A 1950 Chrysler Royal that's just begging for a new owner to give it some love. This beauty is currently up for sale on Craigslist, and let me tell you, it's a car that's got a ton of potential. First off, let's talk about the engine. Under the hood, you'll find a Spitfire straight inline 6-cylinder motor that runs good and is paired with a 3-speed transmission. That's the kind of classic powertrain that you just don't see anymore, and it's sure to get your heart racing every time you turn the key. Now, let's talk about the body. The seller mentions that there's no cancer rust on the undercarriage or the body side, which is a huge plus for a car that's over 70 years old. And while the interior does need to be restored, the fact that this Chrysler is so solid and has never had any body repair is a testament to how well it's been cared for over the years. The seller also mentions a few potential directions you could take this car: antique, gangster, lowrider, or family car. And honestly, with a ride this cool, the possibilities are endless. Whether you want to keep it original or put your own personal spin on it, this Chrysler is a blank canvas just waiting for your creative touch. Now, let's talk about the price. The seller originally had this car listed for $15,000, but due to old age and health issues, they've dropped the price to just $7,500. And while that might still seem like a lot for a car that needs some work, when you consider the history, the potential, and the overall solid condition of this Chrysler, it starts to look like a pretty darn good deal. The seller does mention that the car is being sold as is, where is, which is worth noting. But they also encourage potential buyers to call for a direct talk, so you can get all the details and ask any questions you might have. And while they don't want to deal with texts, they do say that if you reach out after 2 p.m., they'll be happy to answer back. Overall, if you're in the market for a classic car with a ton of potential and a price that's hard to beat, this 1950 Chrysler Royal is definitely worth checking out. With its solid body, classic powertrain, and endless possibilities for customization, it's a ride that's sure to turn heads and get your creative juices flowing. So why not give the seller a call and see if you can make a deal? You might just end up with a piece of history that you can call your own. 17. We've got a real gem for you. A 1966 Buick Riviera that's sure to turn heads wherever it goes. This beauty is currently up for sale on Craigslist, and let me tell you, it's a ride that's got style and power in spades. First off, let's talk about those hideaway headlights. They're such a cool and iconic feature of the Riviera, and they give this car a real sleek and mysterious look. But don't let the pretty face fool you. Under the hood, this thing is a beast. The seller mentions that the car has a 425 nailhead engine with dual carbs, a thumper cam, and headers. That's the kind of setup that's guaranteed to get your heart racing every time you hit the gas. And with a turbo 400 automatic split-shift transmission and dual exhaust, this Riviera is ready to tear up the streets. Inside, the car is in good condition, including the headliner. And with power windows, power steering, and power brakes, it's got all the modern conveniences you could want. The only issue the seller mentions is that the power seat doesn't work, but honestly, that's a small price to pay for a car this cool. One of the things that really sets this Riviera apart is the rare roll-up speedometer. It's the kind of unique feature that you just don't see on many cars, and it adds to the overall vintage charm of this ride. The seller also mentions that the body is a 1010, with no rust. That's a huge plus for a car that's over 50 years old, and it's a testament to how well this Riviera has been cared for over the years. As for the price, the seller is asking $12,500 or best offer. And while that might seem like a lot at first glance, when you consider the rarity, the condition, and the overall coolness of this car, it starts to look like a pretty fair deal. The seller does mention that the odometer reads 31,500 miles, which is relatively low for a car of this age. And with a clean title and a VIN provided, you can be sure that this Riviera is the real deal. Overall, if you're in the market for a classic car that's got style, power, and a whole lot of attitude, this 1966 Buick Riviera is definitely worth checking out. With its hideaway headlights, powerful engine, and overall great condition, it's a ride that's sure to turn heads and get your adrenaline pumping. So why not give the seller a call and see if you can work out a deal? You might just end up driving home in the car of your dreams. 18. We're taking a closer look at a real gem from the past, a 1966 Oldsmobile Starfire that's up for grabs on Craigslist. This classic beauty is priced at $11,000, and from what the seller tells us, it seems like a pretty sweet deal. Now let's dive into the details. The seller mentions that the Starfire is in good condition, which is always a promising sign. It's got a powerful 8-cylinder engine under the hood, and it's a rear-wheel drive, so you know it's got that classic muscle car feel. The transmission is automatic, making it a breeze to drive, and the title is clean, so no worries there. But here's where it gets really interesting. The seller has done some serious upgrades to the engine, including a rebuilt 425 cubic inch big block, new brakes all around, and a bunch of other goodies like a DNA Speedway ignition, roller rockers, a new carburetor, and an aluminum intake manifold. They even threw in a new gold metal oil pan for good measure. With all these upgrades, this Starfire is running strong and ready to impress. The seller also mentions that they have all the stock parts and new parts to bring the car back to its original state, if that's what you're into. Plus, they've got 5 original 14-inch rims and the original hubcaps, which is a nice bonus. One thing to note is that the odometer has rolled over, so the actual mileage is unknown. But hey, with a car this cool, who's counting? The seller also points out that it's a non-op, so there are no back fees to worry about. And get this, the original 375 horsepower stock engine was already pretty impressive, but with all the upgrades, this Starfire is likely packing even more power now. It's a real beast. Overall, if you're in the market for a classic coupe with some serious muscle and a ton of potential, this 1966 Oldsmobile Starfire is definitely worth checking out. Just remember, as with any used car, it's always a good idea to inspect it thoroughly before making a decision. but from what we can see, this Starfire is a real head-turner and a great project car for any enthusiast looking to make a statement on the road. 19. We've got a real treat for you. A 1968 Ford Mustang that's up for sale on Craigslist. This classic pony car has a rich history and a price tag of $12,500. So let's dive in and see what makes it so special. First off, the seller shares a heartwarming story about how their grandparents bought this Mustang brand new when they were in college together. It's always nice to know that a car has been cherished and well cared for by a family over the years. Now let's talk about the condition of this beauty. The seller mentions that the car is all original and has been garage kept, which is music to any car lover's ears. With only 118,000 original miles on the odometer, this Mustang has plenty of life left in it. The seller also notes that there are no leaks and no rust, which is a testament to how well it's been maintained. Under the hood, you'll find the original 289 V8 engine, which is known for its power and reliability. The seller states that the car runs excellently, so you can expect a smooth and exciting ride. Plus, with factory air conditioning, you can cruise in comfort even on hot summer days. The seller also mentions that the car is clean both inside and out, suggesting that the interior has been well preserved and the exterior has been lovingly cared for. They even go as far as to say that this Mustang would make a great daily driver, so you can enjoy this classic car on a regular basis. Now, it's important to keep in mind that while the seller seems sincere and the car appears to be in great shape, it's always a good idea to inspect any used car thoroughly before making a purchase. But based on the description and the car's history, this 1968 Ford Mustang seems like a real gem. The seller is asking $12,500 for this piece of automotive history, which seems like a fair price considering its condition and originality. If you're interested, the seller encourages you to give them a call or text to learn more or arrange a viewing. In summary, this 1968 Ford Mustang is a classic car lover's dream. With its original 289 V8 engine, factory air conditioning, low mileage and clean condition, it's a rare find on Craigslist. If you're in the market for a vintage Mustang that's been well loved and cared for, this might just be the one for you. Don't miss out on the opportunity to own a piece of American muscle car history. 20. We've got a real blast from the past. A 1977 Ford Maverick that's up for grabs on Craigslist. This classic coupe is priced at $12,500, but the seller is open to offers, so there might be some wiggle room for negotiation. Now, let's get into the nitty-gritty of this Maverick. Under the hood, you'll find a 4.1-liter straight-six engine, which is known for its durability and smooth operation. The seller mentions that the car runs and drives great, so you can expect a reliable ride with this classic. One of the standout features of this Maverick is the brand new bumper-to-bumper wiring harness that was installed just this year. This is a big plus, as it ensures that the electrical system is up to par and reduces the risk of any pesky electrical gremlins popping up. The seller currently uses this Maverick as their daily driver, commuting from home to school and work, which speaks to its reliability. However, they do mention that there is a power steering leak. But don't let that deter you. As long as you keep an eye on the fluid level and top it off when needed, the seller says it works without issue. Now, let's talk about the overall condition of this Maverick. The seller states that it's in good shape, and the blue paint color gives it a classic retro vibe. The seats have been reupholstered, which is a nice touch, but the seller does admit that the interior still needs some work. This presents an opportunity for the new owner to put their own personal stamp on the car and really make it their own. The seller positions this Maverick as a great project car or a vehicle that can be driven as is. So, whether you're looking for a fun weekend warrior to tinker with or a unique daily driver with some character, this Maverick could fit the bill. As with any used car, it's always a good idea to inspect it thoroughly before making a purchase. But based on the seller's description, this 1977 Ford Maverick seems like a solid choice for anyone in the market for a classic coupe with a bit of charm and a lot of potential. The asking price of $12,500 might seem a bit steep at first glance, but considering the recent wiring harness upgrade, the reupholstered seats, and the overall good condition, it could be a fair deal. Plus, with the seller open to offers, there's room for negotiation. In summary, if you're looking for a classic car with some personality and a straight-six engine under the hood, this 1977 Ford Maverick is definitely worth checking out. With a little TLC and some interior work, this coupe could be a real head-turner on the road. Don't miss out on the chance to own a piece of American automotive history.